All right, this works. Hello, my name is Ramirez. This is FrogBear.zil. Let me go back to the video that I wanted to play. So, always forgetting to turn on the light. I was watching this video. This video is from Just Pearly Things. I should probably show the channel name to be nice and proper. Just Pearly Things. It's right there. And I cut it down like this because I'm gonna show a portion of a book later. But Pearl said something very interesting in this, where she quotes Rollo, and Rollo's like this other red pill manosphere guy, but that's not. Well, essentially, let's get into the club.
The problem is then it would be a smaller percentage of men having all the women. If sexuality was just untapped, it wouldn't be like every guy got a girl. It'd be a growing, like the number of male virgins would get higher. And I guess that's like a really, like I've heard Rollo talk about this, where that's a really big problem in societies, where if you have a large amount of basically guys with no girls, they get angry, and then I don't know, bad stuff happens. I don't know what.
Turned on my microphone. Right, so she doesn't understand why that's a problem, and it immediately zoomed me. All right, I always talk about this book because honestly, one of my favorite books, The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. That's why the Machiavelli or Machiavellian tactics are known of. And something that's very highlighted in this book, right? So all I did was hit the search function, type in women. Ooh, such a misogynist. Yes, dominate my. I have so much whatever power. Either way, let me fix this border real quick because I want to make sure that I can zoom in properly in this. And I wanted to highlight the use of how they talk about women overall. I make sure that the green screen is properly lit. And it says here, all right, so there's 5 instances that they mention women, but I want you to keep in mind how they're describing women in this. They were freer than their forefathers in dress and living, and spent more in other kinds of excesses, consuming their time and money in idleness, gaming, and women, right? Pleasure. Their chief aim was to appear well-dressed and to speak with an acuteness, whilst he who could would others the most cleverly was thought the wisest. In a letter to his son Guido, Machiavelli shows why youth should avail itself of its opportunities for study, and lead us to infer that his own youth had been so occupied. He writes, I have received your letter, which gives me greatest pleasure, especially because, either way, I just wanted to highlight their use of women and how it's like a swindler culture somewhat, right? They appear well dressed and speak with wit and acuteness. That's the first instance, right? And this is just describing the youth of the book is about Cesare Borgia. I always talk about Cesare Borgia because his face is used as the modern iconography of Jesus' face. But the other instance is, it was Julius II that Machiavelli was sent in 1506, the pontiff commencing It's describing events through history. Only chiefly to his impetuous character, it is reference to Pope Julius that Machiavelli moralizes on the resemblance between fortune and women. Again, it's like something to be, I don't know, it's like a commodity. They always describe it as a commodity. The next instance is here. And this is the one I wanted to, concerning cruelty and clemency, and where it is better to be loved than feared. While it is better to be loved than feared. This is very important because this book, The Prince, is actually used in a lot of political science classes. It's also taught in like acting, theater, and to some degree, what is taught in this book is even taught to like professional NBA players, professional just athletes, because they have to know how to maintain themselves as a public image. You know, it's good for business, quote unquote. Nevertheless, a prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that, if he does not win love, he avoids hatred, because he can endure very well being feared whilst he is not hated, which will always be as long as he abstains from property of his citizens and subjects, and from their women. Again, a commodity to be used as a means of like controlling the populace, but it gets weirder. But when it is necessary for him to proceed against the life of someone, he must do it on proper justification and for manifest cause. But above all things, he must keep his hands off the property of others, because men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. So describing that, like, they could lose their dad, but that sadness, it's a way, they're just basically describing that do not get the hatred of your people because they will turn against you, inevitably. This is why I look at how we're seeing the tides turning against Biden, and a lot of it has to do with this. Right? It is a weird asymmetrical way of looking at this because we're having problems with our culture in a variety of different ways with the men, the women, the way that we socially interact with one another. The very bedrock of our existence is being attacked. I don't know why I wanted to say that. But when it is necessary for... All right, that's the third instance. The fourth instance, it mentions it here, is that one should avoid being despised and hated. Notice how there's 2 chapters that really try to describe not to be hated. Am I not okay, I just want to make sure I'm not muted, because that would have been... Ooh. All right. It makes him hated above all things. Wait, where is it? Did I read the one above? Yeah. Now concerning the characteristics of which mention is made above, I have spoken of the more important ones. The others I wish to discuss briefly under the generality that the prince must consider. And when he says the prince, he's basically talking about anyone they want to make seem like a prince. Anyone that they try to prop up and make look really good. That's primarily what he's describing. Must consider, as has been in part said before, how to avoid those things, which will make him hated or contemptible. And as often as he shall have succeeded, he will have fulfilled his part, and he need not fear any danger in other reproaches. It makes him hated above all things, as I have said, to be rapacious, and to be a violator, to be a violator of the property and women of his subjects. All right, yeah, describing that if you do any of these no-nos, from both of which he must abstain. And when neither their property nor their honor is touched, the majority of men live content. And, right, so this goes back to what Pearl said. She's like, I don't understand why a bunch of men would get angry. And when neither their property nor their honor is touched, the majority of men live content. Right? I kind of would like to look at the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And he has only to contend with the ambition of a few, whom he can curb with ease in many ways. Now you could say this was toppled with the social media age, with its prevalency, and just the feedback loop that it creates, right? The swiping feature, because it's being done both to men and women. With men, it's being done on their video game platforms where all of the games have been made a perpetual grind. Like, you have to play thousands of hours in order for you to achieve something that could be bought with $60. And for women, it's the feedback loop of attention that they've received from social media platforms, from a variety of men, and from the ease of access to thousands of people at a moment's notice, especially if you're pretty. Like, it just... Right, I always bring it up where it's like, I'm content with being a guy because I don't think I can handle all those dick pics. Like, that would be insane. Either way, it makes him contemptible to be considered fickle, frivolous, effeminate, mean-spirited, irresolute, from all of which a prince should guard himself as from a rock, and he should endeavor to show in his actions greatness, courage, gravity, and fortitude. and in his private dealings with his subjects, let him show that his judgments are irrevocable, and maintain himself in such reputation that no one can hope either to deceive him or to get round him. And this is why it is super important that a lot of these political, Twitter people, a lot of the political people that just make content on the internet, or at least the ones that they try to portray as princes, usually you can tell that that's the way it works because they won't allow them to debate anybody that will really challenge their paradigms or their views. A perfect example of this is No More News. And another example of this is Nick Fuentes. And I don't know. To some degree, it reminds me of a video of you must create circuses. Because if you do not have a means of entertainment or drawing the attention of the masses, they'll discover the truth. I could play that video in a bit, but let's continue with this. Actually, I think... Oh no, there's one more instance of the mention of woman. Here he remained many days. Alright, what is this talking about? Yeah, this book is also kind of a historical book where they'll talk about people from like when and when. And I think specifically here with the Tuscanies, the Neapolitans who fought the Florentine side. Okay, so it's talking about the war against the Florentinians. He was not content, occupying right here. He remained many days, dividing the spoils and celebrating his victory with feast and games, holding horse races and foot races for men and women. Okay, no, that's just... Must give them their circuses. And a very nice lead into, right? Because they won. So this was essentially, I guess this is the portion where they describe how they, at this point, it's the end of the war. But towards the creation of the war, this is why it talks about the prince, the creation of a prince, the maintainment of a princely image, and all this other shit. Because the way that they used these tactics was to take control over cities and over all these other places in Italy, where they would send, like, one reputable family would come in, spoil the masses, be really nice, be really gentle, and, like, completely subvert their expectations. Once they got the hold of the people, they knew that they could use the people to then topple the original family that was there in that area. And then the moment that they seized power, they completely toppled over whatever image that they became incredibly tyrannical, but they would do it in increments. This is why it's important that they actually describe events, this and that. He had formed this conspiracy, intending to seize the citadel, kill the partisans of Carstusino, I don't even know, and dive out the garrison. Very, very heavy in the woo-woo of politics, which is why I always bring up that, oh no, I don't always bring it up, but yeah, this book is used in just political science as a whole. And I always wondered why rappers made this reference. Like, they would always reference Machiavelli or Machiavellian or just that word. And my guess is, to some degree, this book is tossed around within their circles, and with good reason. Like, you don't want to be portrayed, you know what I mean? Like, an unkept image and an unkept self could destroy a man, right? Like, and the reason why I say that is because I just remind myself of when I was fat. The lack of accountability, the lack of understanding of how I was viewed with others. There's just a variety of things that this book taught me. Like, but again, this is a mapped science. This is why I called this video something about the origins of the red pill, because to some degree it was well known amongst its aristocrats, amongst the oligarchs, amongst the people that control the levers of cities, amongst mayors, right? Amongst not current day mayors and not current day like governors. No, none of them. The people that slowly are weaving culture, right? Like the MTV of our era, or whatever that is now, TikTok, I would assume. That weaves the culture amongst the young people. They will then prevail whatever thoughts that they come up with. But at the same time, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know where was I going with that idea. Where did I lose myself? Oh, the origins of red pill. Because it's a mapped science. They completely understand the populace to a greater degree than we can assume. And this is just literature from like the 1500s when the Reformation happened. And you know, it's funny. The reason why the Reformation happened is because Cesare Borgia's dad was super into like rewriting the Bible and like taking offers for money to saving people from their sins and all this other shit that just happened at the time. It basically caused a really big rift in Europe. But this is modern day swindling culture, and because just Pearly Thing said that, it reminded me of these portions in this book, and I was just like, to some degree, it is a map science. And I remember mentioning how OnlyFans and these social media platforms kind of open up women as a marketplace, and how accessible people have become is just unfathomable, right? Like I don't know. There's much to be said about that, and actually, I could probably write something about that. Either way. Yeah, that's all I wanted to show for this video. The next thing I'm gonna do is probably like the news. Either way, thanks for watching this episode of the origins of the red pill manosphere stuff. And largely, I only brought it up because, to some degree, I will always say that this is a map science. Human behavior, largely, is well known, well documented. And if they're already writing about it in the 1500s, who knows what sort of literature I'm not even privy to. But read.